Hey, Autumn Athletes, Larry Sorensen here. And today I'm going to connect with Sonja Friend-Uhl and find out what makes her an Autumn athlete that's not done yet. Before we get started, if you enjoy our content, please smash that subscribe button and support the channel. We'd really appreciate it. All right, let's get this thing started. Sonja, thanks so much for joining us today. Why don't you kick us off with an introduction?
Okay, well, my name is Sonja Friend-Uhl. I am 53 years young. I've been in Masters track and fields since the age of 40 when I got started back in 2011. I'm a mother of two. I have two daughters, my oldest being almost 23, my youngest being 15, Alexa, who also runs track and field. And my husband, Brad, is a federal agent for the Department of Justice.
Well, great to meet you. Thanks again for joining us today. Now we're going to talk about your master's career, but first I want to get a little bit of history. So why don't you fill us in on your athletic history?
Well, I've been running since I can remember. I started actually first or second grade. There was a event called the Arco Jesse Owens Games. It's pretty much the equivalent of our AAU today. So that's how I got started. My dad he was an engineer for the oil tankers for the company Arco. So he got word of this track and field event and thought that would be a good idea for me. So I started with the 50-meter dash, believe it or not. Eventually graduated to the 400 a couple of years later. And from there, high school was a great experience for me. 800-meter state champion my senior year. I got a full scholarship to the College of William and Mary in Virginia. And we were Division I. And I competed there all 4 years, had a great career there. And then I started my professional career right after college, but I also continued racing. So I was picked up by, which was Puma/Etonic at the time. Everybody's old enough to remember Etonic shoes, but it was Puma and Etonic were the same brand. So I was picked up by them first, and then ASICS, and that led to my Olympic trials debut in 2000 in the 1500 meters. And then I continued racing professionally while holding down a career after my first daughter was born, Brianna. And I really enjoyed that. It was it was a challenge to come back from pregnancy and with a newborn. But within 9 months, I almost was back to where I started. So that was encouraging and a lot of fun to realize I could still do that, be a mother and still compete. And from there, I just kept competing and coaching and working, full time. My second daughter was born, and then I was a master a couple of years after my second daughter was born. So that was a whole new world, masters.
So you just continued right into the Masters. Was there anything that inspired you to do that in particular, or any people that inspired you to do that?
With social media becoming more of a presence around that time, I started seeing these meets and Masters competitions, and then USATF started advertising it with results and things like that. And so that kind of caught my eye. I still competed in the open division for quite some time. I actually qualified for the Olympic trials when I was 41 in the 1500. I ran 4:16.99. So I just barely got under that B standard. So I still primarily competed in open meets and collegiate meets. I was coaching at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. But I started to dabble that 2011 year. It was a world championship year, and it was going to be in Sacramento. They were in Sacramento. And I thought, oh, okay, well, it's in the US. I can get there fairly easily. So I did that meet. I actually brought Brianna was then 13. I think we were there over her 13th birthday. So that was kind of cool. And that was my first Masters World Championship.
Okay, so we're going to talk about all of your successes here in just a minute. But first, before we get to that, I'd like to know a little bit about any injuries or setbacks that maybe you had along the way.
I've been so blessed and fortunate to not have any significant injuries. I've had little things here and there. Honestly, most of them didn't hit until mid-40s, which I'm really lucky with that. I had plantar fasciitis twice. The second time really set me back. This was before super shoes, and I used to race half marathons quite a bit. Racing a half marathon with my biomechanics in flats just really tore my feet and ankles up. I was beat up for weeks after that. So the last one that I did in Naples, Florida, actually, I think I was early 40s. I ran like 117 and change, and I went back to Nashville limping. And I went to the PT about 5 days later because I was still limping. And he's like, yeah, you have plantar fasciitis. So literally the half marathon, like, just put me over the edge. Part of the cool thing about Masters is that we all are community and we share successes, we share failures, and we also share ideas. So when things like that happen now, with injuries definitely being a higher occurrence as we age, we have people to lean on and ask, you know, what did you do when this happened? The only really main big setback I've had, and I don't consider the pregnancy setback, I chose those and I had great pregnancies. I had an adverse reaction to that Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So I took the vaccine in May of 2021. And the first week I started noticing I had really bad headaches. The back of my neck was very stiff, felt swollen. Didn't think much of it, you know. The next week I went out to the track and I was doing like an interval workout I would normally do, 1K repeats, and was having actually a great workout until like the third or fourth rep. And then I felt I got really lightheaded, and to the point where I had to sit down. And I'm like, that's weird. Maybe I'm just dehydrated, but I've been drinking electrolytes, so maybe I just need to drink more. It got worse after the fourth one, so I attempted to drive home. I had to pull over because my heart rate was climbing. It was like 184 and climbing, very dizzy, couldn't catch my breath. My belly was like, my diaphragm wouldn't contract. So I called my husband, he came to get me. We went to the ER. They ran all kinds of tests. They couldn't find anything. Symptoms like that went on for a couple of weeks. And then after the third ER visit, they sent me to a rheumatologist. And it's actually, and a cardiologist to run more and more tests. I had every test you can pretty much think of, even a brain MRI, because they wanted to rule out, I'm going to say it wrong, Guillain-Barré syndrome. Mm-hmm. Because I was also having numbness in my hands and my feet and like tingling. And then my blood pressure would drop. I was getting very dizzy all the time, not just after exertion. And then I became chronically fatigued. So over the span of like 3 months, my condition just continued to get worse. So at one of my follow-up visits, after the cardiologist and the pulmonologist couldn't find anything, my rheumatologist had consulted with some other specialists, and he put my blood under a high-powered microscope, and I basically had microclotting. So that's why when I would go to the hospital, the D-dimer is a test that normally picks up like a major clot. This was microclotting. Basically your red blood cells kind of clump together, and they end up mine were in rows instead of being dispersed. And the whole point of having great supply of red blood cells and being dispersed is that they distribute the oxygen better in your body, and mine weren't doing that. And it basically caused a condition called dysautonomia. So it's a dysfunction of your autonomic nervous system. A lot of people that have this have what's called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and they typically faint. I wasn't fainting, but I would get very lightheaded, very dizzy, blood pressure drops. I would have these weird, like, I mean, they're basically panic attacks. So I had to stop driving, but it was just because I couldn't breathe right because my diaphragm, that's another symptom of dysautonomia. Your diaphragm doesn't work correctly. You can't pee correctly. Like, it's all these crazy things you normally don't think about. Hiccuping, I would get these crazy series of hiccups, couldn't yawn completely. It was very bizarre. So what he said to me was, he said, the only thing you did differently was take this vaccine, Johnson & Johnson. That vaccine did cause clotting, especially in middle-aged women on oral birth control, which I was on. So there's a whole risk there that we kind of didn't really figure out until later. Thankfully, they pulled that vaccine off the market because they were having a lot of issues with that. But for me, it was too late. So it got worse before it got better. I tried lots of alternative treatments. The most significant one that I think helped being acupuncture, because it goes right to the source. It helps your central nervous system. I did a lot of acupuncture, like twice a week I would go. I did 3 rounds of a very expensive procedure called EBO2. It's blood cleaning, basically. So they put an IV in one arm, they put an IV in the other arm, they take about 85% of the blood out of your body through the one IV, run it through a UV filter, hit it with, it's like a blood thinner. I forget what it's called. They basically clean the blood and then run it back through the other arm. So it's like a 4-hour procedure, but it's out of pocket because it's, it's an alternative therapy. So I did that 3 times over 3 months. And gradually, honestly, I think my body just started to clear whatever the problem was. And my vasculature had to heal because microclots, what they'll do is, basically you're always overdilated. Your blood vessels are overdilated all the time, which is where the allergic reactions come from. And the diaphragm not working properly, the dizziness, like it pretty much, you can follow it back to all the conditions I was having. At one point, I wish I had COVID because I felt, I know long COVID is a real thing and I feel for those people because some of them are still suffering. But no, it was so hard to talk about it because it's such a controversial topic. And I mean, clearly I'm not anti-vax. I took it. It just it wasn't right for me, especially that particular kind of vaccine, so we had, when I coach at FAU, I coach, assistant coach, women's cross country and track. And this year will be my first fall as the head men's coach of cross country. So that whole year, even to be on campus, we had to test twice a week. So I knew I had never been sick that year in 2021. I didn't have symptoms and I had tested twice a week and I never had a positive test. So the rheumatologist was pretty confident that's what it was. So his final instructions to me were, don't take any more vaccines. I can't promise you won't have repercussions for this from this for the rest of your life, but you should get better, which I was. And then his final recommendation to me was to put me on a POTS protocol for strength training. So this is kind of interesting. And thankfully for me as a fitness trainer, that being my career, I knew what to do. But when you do seated weightlifting, your blood pressure, the strength training actually increases your blood pressure, and seated, your blood pressure already increases a little bit. So that was a great help for me. So after about 6 to 7 months of not being able to exert myself at all, like even a plank would send me into the dizziness and the numbness and the tingling, and the shortness of breath. After 6 to 7 months, I was able to get in the weight room. I would stay seated on whatever machine I was using, leg or upper body, and I would do like 3 sets of 8, as heavy as I could handle for the time. And I did that about 3 times a week. And I kept a log, and it was really interesting how quickly that helped. Like, I think that really that and the acupuncture probably were the 2 biggest things that bring me back to as close to normal as possible. So then the remaining 3 months, I would do that. And then I could do like the elliptical or the seated bike. And then finally, almost a year from when I took the vax, I was able to start running again. And I use the term running loosely because it was really like walk running. Like it was comical, but I would get excited about beating my time on my 12-minute pace walk run from the week before. Like that old competitor kind of took over, which is good, but it was kind of funny too. It really was a great lesson in appreciating what you have, because you just never know when it might be taken away, and you have no control over that sometimes, Mm-hmm. But I was very grateful initially just to be able to live a full life again, because there were moments in those first 3 months. I remember my family was, my eldest was home from college. She went to UF, and I think it was over Christmas break, and they were all going to go out to dinner because she had just gotten home. And I literally, I couldn't go because I couldn't sit up in a chair to have dinner because I would get, I mean, it was ridiculous, So to go from that to even just jogging around my neighborhood was awesome. Like, I was really excited about that. And then, as we often do as athletes, I started to allow myself to daydream a little more about bigger goals. And so eventually I got to where I could run, a 5K distance again, 10, 11-minute pace per mile. Then I would challenge myself more. I would stay on the treadmill because the heat was a big trigger. Again, because of that, the response to my vasculature. And I live in South Florida in high heat and humidity. Mm-hmm. So I had to stay on the treadmill and air conditioning for most of the time. But by the time we hit cross country season in 2022, I was able to get out there and coach. which meant a lot to me because I had missed a whole year with the team. And then I was able to start training a little bit again. Again, it was very different from before. And it took me like another year to get back athletically to where I felt like, okay, I don't like, what would happen is even that first year I could train, but if I would work a little bit too hard, the shortness of breath would come back. It was just a sensitivity in my vascular system, you know, and my autonomic nervous system would just kind of go on alert and say, I think you're overstepping here. I think some of it towards the end was probably more psychosomatic because I was just so used to being afraid of any kind of weird feeling or trigger. Yeah. So eventually I just started, like, after the upteenth doctor checkup where they said there's nothing, like, we can't find, there's no more clots, like, you're good, you've cleared everything. I just kind of told the fear to shut up, and I would just push it in workouts. And when I didn't, you know, keel over, I knew everything was okay. I was always safe, but I would push the limit a little bit. And every time I did that, I think I conquered another step in the process. So, you know, I would say the first race back that I felt like, oh, this is the normal athletic Sonja, 3 years older, so there's an impact there, but there's this big Thanksgiving weekend race down here, and a lot of pros come forward. They give a lot of prize money. It's called the Flanagan's Rock and Rib Run 10K. It's on the road. It's in like that Thanksgiving weekend in November. And I was in that race, and I couldn't remember the last time I was even close to a 6-minute pace for a 5K, much less a 10K. And I think I averaged like around a 6:20 pace and ran a really decent time, like close to 40 flat. So that was very fulfilling and exciting to me because I thought, okay, I think I'm coming back now. Like, I think I can actually be me again, athletic. And I was right, because then we went to indoor and I had some great times. Indoor, outdoor has been a good season for me. And now I'm training for the World Championships in Sweden in August. So long story, but hopefully it's helpful to some people who might be struggling. It took me 2.5 years to really come back fully as an athlete. It took me about a year to come back as a healthy person. But if you had asked me when I was at my lowest, both health-wise and therefore psychologically too, did I ever think I would compete at this level again? I would have said no. And I'm a very optimistic person, but that's how bad off I was. So I consider myself very fortunate to be able to compete like I am and be in this community of people again. And quite frankly, to be alive and healthy, because it was really, really touch and go for the first few months.
Well, that's quite a story. We are excited that you are back. So we're going to turn a little more to a positive note, I guess, here. And I want to hear about all of the successes that you have had. Certainly the successes before this illness, but then what you've done since then. So it's time for you to brag on yourself just a little bit and tell us how good you really are.
Okay. Well, I talked about college a little bit. I had a successful run through college, primarily 800 meter, 1500 meter, 4x8, sometimes a 4x4 they'd throw me on, but had a great college career, had a few records that held for a while. I think they've all been beaten by now. Graduated in 93. The highlight of my professional career was qualified for the Olympic trials in the 1500. I ran 4:13.9. I did not make the final that year, but it was incredible to be there and just mix it up. It took me, 8 years. I had been trying to qualify for trials for 8 years, and finally it worked out. I also was, I did a lot of road racing during that time too. I had an agent. I raced everything from a mile on the roads to half marathons. And I did pretty well. So I actually ran that New Haven 20K. I think it was 2006 or 2007. And from that race, they picked the women that were going to go to the half marathon, which actually that year ended up being a 20K World Championships in Budapest. And so luckily for me, I guess a few of the real, like Dina Castor elected not to go to the half marathon championships that year. a couple other heavy hitters. So anyway, I ended up with my 9th place finish at the New Haven 20K that year. I ended up getting a spot on the world team for the race in Budapest. So it was my first like real world championship, you know, as a professional or open runner, way out of my like normal wheelhouse as far as the distance was concerned. But Jack Daniels was coaching me at the time remotely, and he knew what to do to get me prepared. It was tough because I had to train over the South Florida summer for a half marathon in October, but that was really cool. That was probably the highlight of that era. And then for Masters, I've had a lot of success with Masters. I just love it so much. I love the camaraderie. I love how many opportunities they give us to compete and race all over the world. So I won the 1500 and the 800 at the World Championships in 2011. I had, for a while there, for 10 years, I held the world record in the women's indoor mile for the 40 to 44 age group. I ran 4:44.81 at an indoor meet in Virginia Tech. It was a collegiate meet. And that it's still the American record, but that held as a world record for about 10 years. And then recently Sasha Golish from Canada beat it a couple years ago. I have several other records ranging from the 800 to the 3K. I can't remember all the age groups and different times right now, but I think the only 800 one I have as an American record was right before I took the shot. Actually, it was down in Miami. I jumped in a meet and I ran 2:19. I just turned 50. And then, so that's an American record. And then a couple of weeks before that, I had ran 4:41 for the 1500 after turning 50, which is the current American record for that distance. So, you know, I've had a few records. It's been fun. My only other world championships thus far was in 2019. I went to the indoor meet in Torun, Poland. And that was amazing. I actually have Polish heritage on my mom's side. My great-grandparents literally came off the boat from Czechoslovakia and Poland. So that was kind of cool. I got to eat real pierogies. And I won the 800 there. I ran 2:17 and change. And then I was second. I got a silver medal in the 1500. So that was a great experience. And it was fun to be with the team for something like that, now that I know everybody better in the Masters community. And aside from that, there's been a lot of, you know, national championships and things like that, but it's been a good ride. I can't complain.
Well, I know you do have a long list, and for my audience out there, I'm going to post her entire resume in the description below because it is lengthy. It's hard for her to remember all of them at once. But so what are you planning on here in the near future? Do you have any up and coming events?
Yes, the two biggest ones, of course, being US Nationals, the USATF Masters Nationals in Sacramento. So back to where it all started for me. I will race the 400, the 800, and the 1500 there. And then the next big one after that will be World Championships in Sweden. And I will race the 800, the 1500, and hopefully if I run fast enough, they will choose me for the 4x400 relay. I would really like to do that too. So.
Okay, so you're preparing for these big events and kind of an interesting combination of events ranging from the 400 up to some of the longer ones. So tell us, how are you preparing for these? Give us a little idea of your training regimen.
I train and race year round, like many of us do as track athletes. I'm more on a collegiate schedule because I still coach at the collegiate level and I get to race in a lot of those meets. So it's kind of conducive for me. So I raced cross country. I took maybe 10 days recovery after cross was over. And then I was kind of like dabbling in a few road races, but also prepping for indoor. So that was from, you know, early December on. So my first break from training and racing came about 2.5 weeks ago. I took 5 days off. I did a all-comers meet here. And raced and ran the 400 and the 800. It was like really 20 minutes apart. Those days. That's the only thing about all comers meets. Sometimes the duration of rest is not optimal, especially if you're over 40. but we made it work. I took about 5 days off, and then I started right into basically what I consider like phase 3 training again. So for me, that is once every 10 days, an interval workout that's focused on VO2 max. So basically 3K to 5K pace intervals. And also in that 10 days would be a pure raw speed workout. So anything from 150s, maybe it's hill repeats, up to fast 200s to 300s. And then a tempo. I need a steady diet of lactate threshold I've found over the years, or I peak too soon. So I keep, and it could be just, there's a tempo flux workout I have that I do where I'll go 400 meters at my lactate threshold pace, 100-meter jog, and I'll do that for up to 3K, take a couple minutes break, repeat that 2 to 3 times. Or sometimes I just do a steady state, 20 to 30 minutes. But with my miler mentality, the steady states aren't my favorite. So, and especially in our heat, I usually use the flux, but I do need that lactate threshold. It's been very important to my training and my longevity. So, and then the final thing that I'll include in those 10 days, as far as running goes, is my long run. My long run can be anywhere from like a 9-mile progression, where it's like every 5 to 15K, every 5K, I up the ante with the pace a bit, or just 12 miles, nice and easy, and then I strength train at least twice a week. And before my speed workouts, at least twice a week, I'm also doing form drills. I like wickets. I like to run over the wickets, to keep my stride efficient, things like that.
You've obviously put in the physical work, but that's only half the equation. So tell us about your approach to diet and nutrition, and then also rest.
I don't overthink the nutrition side of it. Maybe because it's been my profession for all these years. I've been a personal fitness trainer, and I've had a certification in sports nutrition since 1996. So, and I surround myself with people who know much more than me. So it keeps me confident that I'm doing the right things. But basically, I eat a sensible diet that's high in protein, low in processed carbs. I don't necessarily limit my carbs. I just try to surround them around my workouts and fuel well. So rice, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, fresh fruits and vegetables. I keep an adequate amount of those in my diet for sure on a daily basis. I love healthy fats like nut butters, avocado, olive oil. But I don't restrict much, except obviously like I need to be careful about how much sugar I take in, as we all should for various reasons. But I have a sweet tooth, so I don't eliminate it entirely. Supplements, I definitely believe in certain supplements. I take beta-alanine regularly when I'm in season and training for races. I take creatine, just a low maintenance dose. I use amino acids pre and post workout. I always come to my workout with my water bottle ready with the protein and carb mix, for a post-recovery nutrition, things like that. So it's pretty simple, but it works. It's worked for me for many years. And then on the recovery side, there's so many tools out there now, you can almost be overwhelmed with it. So I try to be as efficient as possible. Number one, just get enough sleep. So I've really made and I used to not do that when my kids were younger. It was harder to have a full-time job, train like a professional athlete, and raise 2 young children. But now I can make it a better priority. So I try to get 8 hours of sleep a night. Sometimes it's 7, but I get as close as I can. And then I found little tricks of the trade. Like I use something called Firefly, because I don't always have the time to sit. And I do have a compression sleeve. I have compression sleeve boots, but I don't always have the time to sit there for 15 to 20 minutes and just lay around. So these Firefly, it's an apparatus that you can, have you seen them before? You can put them, it's a certain nerve that they hook up to around your knee. And it basically can increase your circulation up to 400%. So it's great for recovery, but you can walk around with them on. So it's great for traveling. It's great for the plane because it'll help with the altitude swelling and all that. So I use those. I do a lot of, like, I try to get a massage once every 10 days. So those are my main things I do to prioritize recovery. But sleep's number one. Like if we all just slept better and got our post-workout nutrition dialed in, I think that those are 2 of the biggest things you could do to help yourself.
All right. So if you could bottle it, I like to call it your secret sauce, so the rest of us can be as successful as you are, what would be the ingredients in that recipe?
My quote unquote secret sauce has been this innate desire to improve myself every day. Even just the opportunity to do that, even if I'm not successful, which we're not always successful every day, getting better than the day before, but just the opportunity to try, to me is everything. And I think that's with all walks of life, not just running. So if you can find something out there that drives you, that you really can a marker that you can measure to try to improve on every day, I think that is the secret sauce.
You mentioned something about your professional career as a trainer. Tell us a little bit about that. Where can we find you?
It's Fit with Sonja. I operate through a platform called Trainerize. So it allows me to work with people both online, which became very popular, obviously, during the pandemic, but also I have about 12 clients right now locally that I go to in person. And it's fitness training, wellness training. I have some athletes. I have some people who just want to live a healthier life. I have people as young as 12, and I have adults as old as 84. So it's a wide range, but I like that because I like stepping into something new every day or every session and having new goals, somebody's different goals, new goals, things like that. So if they look up Fit with Sonja and then trainerize.com, they'll see my website.
Okay, great. Hey, we're going to take just a couple of seconds here and find out a couple of quirky things about you in a little rapid fire questions session. Okay. First of all, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Okay. If you had to relax, would it be a couch, recliner, or rocker?
Oh, rocker.
You got to get pumped up for the race or just tough workout. What's your go-to?
I'm going Run DMC.
Oh, you're going to go out for some entertainment. Would it be a Broadway show, a concert, or a movie?
Movie.
Anything in particular come to mind that you like? Any particular types?
I mean, I don't want people to laugh at me, but like, I like the Marvel movies. I also like drama. I have a really strange appetite in entertainment. Like I have a very broad spectrum that I enjoy. So I just I like to lose myself in something else for a while. So I'm not always stressing about what I have to do next.
Thank you, Sonja, so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. I want to give you just a minute here to give us some final thoughts.
I would say if you are out there listening and you are already a Masters competitor, I encourage you to get more involved if you can with USATF and our Masters community. We have a lot of opportunities for volunteers who want to help out with what we're trying to achieve with Masters. If you're not already a Masters competitor, I would welcome you to the fold. It's a fantastic group. Not only will you find yourself more competitions, you'll find yourself more friendships, more opportunities for training ideas, people of like minds that are trying to better themselves every day, even as we age. So that's my main message, is just to don't try to go it alone. Find your people, find your tribe, and give back.
Well, there you go, folks. Sonja Friend-Uhl. She is definitely an automathlete that's not done yet. Remember, keep moving, set your own goals, and train hard to achieve them. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.